Hello and welcome to the Golden Playbook. Today we are going to go over 7 middle round guys that are absolute steals at their current ADP. And we're going to go over some good middle round draft strategies and tips for your upcoming fantasy football drafts. Getting into the first tip for the middle rounds, you want to balance out your upside and your floor based on what you did in the early rounds of the draft. For example, if you went for higher upside guys with a wider range of outcomes, like an Ashton Jeanty or a Christian McCaffrey or a Rashee Rice, guys who obviously could hit huge above their ceiling, but we also know their floor is very, very low. So grabbing guys with a safe floor in these middle rounds will help give your team some safety and security in case your early high upside guys flop. And this goes both ways, right? So if you grab those high upside guys, you want to get some safe floor guys. But if you do the opposite and grab guys that are, safe floors, your Jamar Chase, your CD Lambs, your Bijans, your Saquons, guys that we know exactly what they're going to get. We know the volume will be there. We know the upside is there. You can shoot for some higher upside guys in these tiers, like rookies, Travion Henderson, RJ Harvey, or at receiver, shooting for a Roma Dunze sophomore jump, or Travis Hunter. Maybe he plays 85% offensive snaps, and Travis Hunter is a great fantasy asset. That is the luxury you have in these middle rounds. If you go safe floor early, you can swing for these high upside pieces with wider range of outcomes. So just keep that in mind during your drafts. Depending what you do in the early rounds, that should lead into what you do in these middle rounds, whether you play it more safe with higher floor guys who you know what you're going to get, or if you go for the higher upside, rookies, second year guys we're hoping to, have a jump. My second tip in the middle rounds is don't overly worry about buys. A lot of people see the bye weeks. They don't want to have too many guys on the same bye on their team, but I think that should not be the deciding factor. If you really like a guy and he's the same bye as some of your early picks, just select him. If you are truly between two guys and they're neck and neck even, you could use the bye for the tiebreak then. I would not overly worry about having too many guys on the same bye week because a lot changes and happens throughout the season. You're going to pick up guys off waivers. People are going to get hurt. By the time that the bye weeks come around, it honestly probably won't be that big a deal. And even if all things go, according to plan, that's only 1 week you'll have to sacrifice, and then you'll basically be at full strength, have your full team for the rest of the weeks. So it's not the end of the world to have a lot of guys on the same bye. My third and final tip before we get into specific players in these middle rounds is look for falling values. During these middle rounds, 6 to 9, there's almost always guys that fall way below ADP based off of the, preference of your league mates. And so basically don't box yourself into only needing one position. Keep your options available in case a player does fall to you. You're able to grab, a running back or a receiver that you haven't loaded up. You don't want to find yourself in a position where you've already drafted, one running back and 5 receivers, but a receiver falls to you, but you feel like you need to draft a running back. So don't box yourself into certain positions. Lots of value will tend to fall to you in these middle rounds. Subscribe! All right, let's finally get into the specific guys I really like in these middle rounds, starting with Calvin Ridley. He is the wide receiver 32, and he is projected from sportsbooks for 925.5 yards, 5.5 touchdowns. And if you look, this is similar numbers to guys in the wide receiver 20 range. It is not that big of a drop-off. We know Calvin Ridley is the number 1 wide receiver by far for Tennessee. We obviously don't know what to expect with Cam Ward, but he is the number 1 overall pick, and we're expecting, big things. And honestly, it can't get much worse as far as quarterback play for Calvin Ridley. And he had 1,000 yards last year with Will Levis, with Mason Rudolph throwing him the ball. So I think Calvin Ridley is currently a smash pick in these middle rounds for a safe floor wide receiver with also some potential upside. I really like Calvin Ridley in the middle rounds. Next guy on this list is Jauan Jennings. He's the wide receiver 35, and his projection from ESPN's Mike Clay is 1,015 yards. I could not find any lines on sportsbooks for him. I know he wants a new contract, potentially asking for a trade. I think they'll get that all settled up, and I think he'll be San Fran's number 1 wide receiver heading into the season. I think Ayuk will be on the PUP list out at least the first 4 weeks, and so it'll be Jauan Jennings and George Kittle as the main receiving threats. Of course, Ricky P will be, a third option, but we've seen just how much Purdy likes Jauan Jennings on third downs in the red zone, getting very, very valuable targets and touches. I think Jauan Jennings is a smash pick in the middle rounds. My next guy on this list is another wide receiver, Jakobi Meyers, currently being drafted as the wide receiver 41. And honestly, this does not make sense to me. He's projected 800 yards, 4.5 touchdowns, but I think he will soar over that in this Las Vegas offense. Last year, he had 1,000 yards with terrible quarterback play. This year, Geno Smith comes into the fold, who has obviously produced high fantasy wide receivers in Seattle. And Jakobi had 1,000 yards last year with a bad quarterback play. I'm expecting him to be a PPR machine. I could easily see 130, 140 targets for Jakobi Meyers this season. Sure, you could argue he doesn't have this high ceiling. I think his floor alone will be a top 30, top 25 wide receiver. I love Jakobi Meyers' value currently. Next up on the list, we have Tony Pollard being drafted as the running back 27. He's projected 900 yards, 5.5 touchdowns from sportsbooks, and also like 250 receiving yards. Tony Pollard's the guy we've really become kind of bored of at this point. He's in Tennessee for the second season now, and I think the Tennessee offense is going to be much improved. As you can see, I'm kind of betting some chips on them with Ridley on this list, with Pollard on this list, and I even like Spears later. I think Pollard and Spears will have a good two-headed backfield this year, but Pollard's the guy who has proven he can produce in the rushing game, in the receiving game. I think people are just bored of him at this point, but I think he's going to get plenty of volume to pay back his RB27 price, if not even more in the middle rounds. Our fifth guy on the list is Kaleb Johnson, RB23, projected 824.5 rushing yards. And listen, this is the one rookie I think is definitely undervalued just based off projected volume. And I like that Aaron Rodgers is coming to town. I think Kaleb Johnson could see a surprising amount of work in the receiving game. As we know, A-Rod loves to dump the ball down to running backs. A lot of people are realizing that for Jaylen Warren's value, but I also think that raises Kaleb Johnson's value quite a bit. And also, it creates a threat through the air, so Kaleb Johnson should have more room to run on the ground. I'm sure Warren will be kind of the third down guy. I think Kaleb Johnson will have enough opportunity to really pay up his value, and I think he could have sneaky upside through the receiving game. I really like Kaleb Johnson in the middle rounds. Next up on this list, we have DeAndre Swift. He's at the RB25 right now, and he's projected about 850 yards. And I think Swift's another guy similar to Pollard that we have really grown bored of. But with Chicago not adding any other pieces, I think Swift's going to be kind of a workhorse back for them like he was last year. With Ben Johnson coming over, we've seen what the Detroit running backs have done in previous seasons. They've been huge fantasy assets, and I think Swift will be the same. I think he's another high upside guy who could definitely have some spike weeks. I think DeAndre Swift, as long as he stays healthy, easily pays up this RB25 price tag and could be, an RB15 type of guy based off volume alone. Seventh and final guy on this list for my favorite middle round players, and that'll be Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver 38 currently, projected 925 yards. And listen, Jerry Jeudy is not my favorite guy, I will admit that, but his opportunity is enough to where he should be being drafted above this. Of course, there's the quarterback concerns. Jerry Jeudy doesn't have real threats to his targets outside of David Njoku. And I do like that he proved last year he can be a good fantasy asset. Yes, that was mostly due to Jameis kind of throwing it 40, 45 times a game. But I think Cleveland Browns will be bad enough again that they will have to throw a lot, no matter who's at quarterback. I think if it starts out as Joe Flacco, I think that'll be prime for Jerry Jeudy. He's just another guy who is going to see way, way too much volume to be drafted as the 38th wide receiver. He's also an explosive enough guy that he could have some good yards after the catch and kind of provide higher upside games. So although Jerry Jeudy is not one of my favorite players in general, he's a fantastic wide receiver value right now in the middle rounds of your fantasy football drafts. All right, there you have it. There's my middle round strategies as well as my 7 favorite draft picks in these middle rounds of your fantasy drafts. Next week, I'm going to be doing some more later round guys, some more sleepers, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you hit the like button. Comment down below if you agree on these players or if you have other guys in these middle rounds that you really like. Comment down below. I would love to chop it up with you guys down in the comments. Also, while you're down there, make sure you hit the subscribe and our notification bell so you know when I'm dropping a video. I appreciate the support. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.